What's up, everybody? This is Alex Christopher from the Duran, and I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. And today we're going to talk about Theresa May's support dwindling over her muck-up of the Brexit negotiations. So, Alexander, a recent poll that was asking UK residents, British residents, what they thought of Theresa May's handling of the Brexit negotiations found their support at 16% for Theresa May. So 16% approved of the way she was handling Brexit. In the same poll, they asked if they thought Boris Johnson would do a better job, and 34% said yes, he would be able to handle Brexit much more effectively than Theresa May. Also within that poll, there was various questions as to the type of parties the people would vote for, and the people signaled that they would be very keen on seeing a party, a different conservative right party, perhaps take control of the government in London. They hinted at Farage, they hinted at UKIP. So there was a general tendency of people to want Farage to throw his hat back into the political circle. What do you make of this poll, and what do you make of the way Theresa May has been handling Brexit?
Well, my first reaction is that I'm surprised that there are as many as 16% of people who think Theresa May appear to think that Theresa May is doing a good job with Brexit, because I haven't yet come across anybody who thinks that she's doing a good job with Brexit. I mean, she has made a total disaster of the negotiation. I mean, she's wasted 17 months agonizing, and eventually came up with a plan, which we discussed recently in a program. That was the three of us, yourself, myself, and Peter Lavelle, and we agreed that there was an absolutely unworkable and hopeless plan, which has been increasingly discredited, and which, of course, the European Union has now rejected. So, as I said, I mean, she has made a total mess. It is a slight surprise to me that Boris Johnson is doing as well as he is. I suspect what we're starting to see is a anyone but May sort of attitude beginning to sort of gain hold. But I am not surprised at all that there are people outside in the country, in England especially, who are now talking about setting up a more right-wing, more clearly defined, more hardline pro-Brexit party, and is starting to talk about Nigel Farage leading it, because Farage has been absolutely clear and straightforward about what he's wanted right the way through. He speaks a clear voice, which Theresa May never has done. And I have always said, I've said this ever since the referendum happened, that trying to play fast and loose with the referendum result was going to go down incredibly badly in England outside London, where people voted overwhelmingly for Brexit, and where they would be extremely angry if they thought that that vote was being set aside and this objective that they had voted for was taken from them. So it doesn't surprise me at all that that is happening. I would have thought that was entirely predictable. And it speaks volumes for Theresa May's incompetence that she couldn't see it. And it speaks even more for the general incompetence and blindness of the British political class in London that they couldn't see it either.
When I look at Boris Johnson, I mean, the first word that comes to my head is a buffoon. And I'm also surprised that he got 34% support in the poll. Do you think, objectively speaking, that Boris Johnson could be the next prime minister? And do you think he could do a better job than May? I'm not saying he does a great job. I'm not saying he's going to be a transformative figure, a Churchill, a Thatcher, someone of that stature. But do you think that he would do a better job than May?
Right. You asked me two questions.
Yeah.
Firstly, could he become prime minister? I'm afraid the answer has to be yes, because we're looking at such a volatile situation that I think anything is possible. And no one should discount the possibility of Boris Johnson becoming prime minister. Personally, I don't think it's going to happen, but certainly the possibility is there. Would he do a better job than Theresa May? The short answer, I am sure, is no. He might actually make a more coherent stab of the Brexit negotiations, in the sense that he might actually put together a more sort of internally logical or consistent package than Theresa May has done. That wouldn't be difficult, frankly. I am extremely sceptical about whether he would be able to execute it. I'm extremely sceptical about whether or not he'd be able to hold the Conservative Party together, given that he's very unpopular inside the Conservative Party. And I think he would be an absolute disaster in every other respect. So I think he would be a very bad prime minister indeed. I think he might even be a worse prime minister, if possible, than Theresa May. And that, frankly, is saying quite a lot at this moment.
So I'm sure these poll numbers are the last thing that Theresa May wanted to see. She's just getting beaten day in, day out. How long do you think she can sustain such bad news on a daily basis? How long can her government hold up?
Well, it is by every logic, every logical pointer, it is far past its sell-by date. I mean, she should not be prime minister now. I mean, she didn't do well in the election last year. By universal consent, Jeremy Corbyn completely outbid her. He won on points against her. She should not. She's made a complete mess of the Brexit negotiations. I mean, she brought all the ministers together in Chequers, that's the Prime Minister's country residence, and came up with this cunning plan, which it turned out wasn't so cunning at all, and sort of thought that she'd manoeuvred them into agreeing with her, and it turned out that they hadn't. So even that unraveled very fast. She is clearly no longer in full control of her own party. She's certainly not in control of the House of Commons. Logically, she should not be prime minister. The reason she is prime minister is not because she is strong, but because there doesn't seem to be anybody else in a position to take over from her. So she continues by default. And it is very bad, and it's very dangerous for the country that in this very precarious situation in which it finds itself in, when it needs a strong hand to lead it through Brexit into whatever future it faces outside the European Union, it is led by somebody who has no ideas and no willpower and no ability to see things through, but who nobody seems in a position to replace. I mean, I've never known a situation like this before arising. And if you go back to the last time when Britain was in a crisis that was in some ways comparable to this one, which was in 1940, when the Chamberlain government was clearly disintegrating, well, there was the towering figure of Churchill ready to take over. It is a disaster that there is nobody else like that. I mean, the idea that Boris Johnson is the equivalent of Churchill is a risible one. And it is why, as I said, we see this thing going on and on and on with no certain outcome.
They say timing is everything. And Nigel Farage thought it was the right time after he won the Brexit vote, after he was the main figure to propel the Brexit vote outcome. He thought it was time for him to step out of politics. Is the timing now right for Farage to step back into politics? And what effect do you think Farage could have on Theresa May, on Brexit, and generally in Britain? What do you think a Farage presence back in the political realm could have on all the dynamics going on right now domestically in the UK?
Well, I mean, the extraordinary thing about British politics at the moment is that the two most interesting and effective politicians are two politicians who are outside the political system. They're Jeremy Corbyn, who the political system hates, who is on the left, and they're Nigel Farage, who the political system hates and who is on the right. I think Nigel Farage made a major mistake when he resigned after the Brexit referendum. He should have stayed in harness until Brexit was done. And I think he realizes that, and I think he is now seriously thinking of coming back. I mean, he said it. I think if he does come back, he is obviously by far the most talented and charismatic person on the hardline Brexit right. I mean, he is an infinitely better politician than Boris Johnson is, to put it mildly. And if we look back at what UKIP achieved when Nigel Farage was leading it, I mean, it was winning elections against the Conservatives in all sorts of places. It was threatening Labour in all sorts of places. It pushed the Conservatives to hold the referendum on Brexit, which they would not have done if UKIP, led by Nigel Farage, had not been there. And I think that Nigel Farage coming back, leading UKIP, is for many Conservatives the worst nightmare. Now, I think that may happen, and I frankly think, because we have to have some sort of a resolution, my view is bring it on. Please do it. I think that we need to have a proper debate in this country. And I mean, we've got to understand that the two people who are making the running at the moment are Nigel Farage and Jeremy Corbyn. Right. One may not like either of them, one might agree with either of them, but they are the two people that are there around whom politics should now reform. I think keeping people like Theresa May in, keeping people like Boris Johnson in, is a disaster. So, I mean, if Nigel Farage is listening to this, perhaps he is. I know he sometimes listens to all sorts of things. Please come back, Nigel. We need you.
Finally, what do you think is going through the minds of the technocrats and the bureaucrats in Brussels as they look on and see all this meltdown in the May government?
Well, I suspect that they are completely unsure, and I think that some of them have different views. I mean, I think there was a view a few weeks ago that, that they had the British on the run, and Theresa May came out with this absurd and unworkable plan, and the Europeans said, right, we're going to take this and we're going to force the British into even more concessions, and we're going to put the British exactly where we want them. And I think that was where the whole thing was heading, at least that's where they thought. Now what has happened is that there's been a major backlash in Britain against Theresa May's plan, and I think there are some people in Brussels who are getting worried. But I'm going to say something. I don't get the sense that Brussels and the technocrats have worked out their position very clearly either. I don't think they ever really game planned for a situation where a major European country like Britain would leave the European Union. And I don't really think they themselves know what their end point, what their desired end point is. So do they really want to drive Britain out completely? There might actually be logic in that. Or do they want to come to some sort of halfway deal with Britain? So I think that there's confusion on the EU side also. And of course, there's the technocrats. Some of the technocrats may be saying, well, the British were always the people who were slowing down integration within the European Union. If we get the British thrown out, maybe we can push forward with this even more vigorously than we have been doing up to now. But, there's the technocrats in Brussels. The technocrats are not the entirety of the European Union. There are other European governments now starting to appear. There's the new government in Italy, which is frankly extremely skeptical about all these integrationist views. There's people like Orban in Hungary. There's Kaczynski in Poland. They're all becoming increasingly resistant to the integrationist policies. It's not clear what their opinions about Brexit are. And frankly, it looks to me as if the Europeans are as unsure about where they're going as the British are. And that makes for a very complicated negotiation indeed.
Well, let's see how things unfold for Theresa May. It looks like they're going from bad to worse. And usually when things...
And
yeah.
they're going from bad to worse for Theresa May. But let's be very clear, they're also going from bad to worse for the country as well. Because we don't have, at this moment in time, to all intents and purposes, we don't have a government. We don't have a leadership. We don't have any kind of sense of direction. Nobody knows where we're going at the moment. And we see all these various lobby groups maneuvering hard and pushing in one direction. One day we seem to be tilting one way, another day we seem to be tilting the other. And this can't go on for much longer without serious harm being done.
Yeah, let's just hope that Theresa May doesn't do anything stupid like get a third Novichok victim,
I'm afraid that is a very real possibility, and I'm afraid we have to be prepared for it. I mean, watch this space is the only answer I can give to that.
When in doubt, blame Russia, and it seems like that's the card that Theresa May likes to play.
That is the card to play.
Yeah, absolutely. Alexander Vickers, thank you very much for your analysis on a very bad couple of months for Theresa May and on those recent poll numbers that show Theresa May's support sinking to 16% with regards to her Brexit negotiations. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below. Click on that notifications bell to get notifications every time we push out a new video. And visit the Duran shop. Help support the Duran. Alexander Vickers, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Until next time, take care.